The scripture for this morning is taken from the book of the Acts of the Apostles, the first chapter. When the disciples had come together, they asked Jesus, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom?" Jesus replied, "It is not for you to know the times or dates that the Father has set by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." I wonder, what would the alien from the other world possibly think of us this morning, especially what we will do in a few minutes? In quiet solemnity, pass through the pews little white wafers and thimbles of grape juice, not enough to keep a parakeet alive. Rather strange on the face of it if you are standing on the outside, and yet almost 1/3 of the human race will engage in this little exercise this very day, Worldwide Communion Sunday. And that's another phrase that puzzles, Holy Communion. You won't encounter that expression in the Wall Street Journal or on Crosstalk. Yet it refers to the heart and center of the worship of most of those 2 billion people all over this globe who call themselves Christians. So what is this meal, this Holy Communion, really all about? Some hocus-pocus magic, some bare symbol, empty of meaning? Well, it's really about community. Eating and drinking and community do go together, do they not? We've lost touch with that in this day, I think, of grazing and irregular schedules. Sometimes wonder if the family is not disintegrating because of the loss of meal times together. There's something about eating together that is more than just stoking the furnace. It's not just about the needs of the body, it is about the needs of the spirit as well, the need to face and talk and share and eat together. And of course, today, if we do eat together, it's all together too often in the glare of the tube than by candlelight, is it not? But it's not a total loss. It's very hard to be a family or friends without occasionally lifting a glass and passing the goulash. It's very hard to have friends over, have you ever noticed? Not at some point ask if they would not like something to eat or drink. What's that all about? My point is that even secular society seems to sense that sustenance for the body is intimately related to sustenance for the soul. The sustenance of friendship, of family, of community. And community was what it was about way back then. Special community. That's what Holy Communion means. Holy means not spooky, it means special. And this special community is created, first of all, back then, by a common dependency. Dependency upon the Holy Spirit. There's that word again. A special spirit, the Spirit of Jesus. Jesus tells his first friends, his little community, it's not for you to know when the end will come, none of your business. Don't become preoccupied with your speculations. But when the special Spirit of God, my Spirit, comes upon you, enters your life, then you will be my people here in Jerusalem, in Judea and Samaria, and to the very ends of the earth. In dependence upon me and my presence with you, you will stay together and you will live out my life. It's there in this crumb and thimble meal, if we pay attention, no matter that there's not enough there to even get us through the day, but it is, after all, still bread and beverage. And without these, there's not one of us here who would be alive in a few weeks. When you take the bread and the wine, you signal to yourself that you are not autonomous, that without bread and wine and love and God, you do not live. And so do not make light of something so little. Sometimes a little will do as a reminder. Someone has written, be careful with the crumbs, do not overlook them. Be careful with the crumbs, the little chances to love, the tiny gestures, the morsels that feed, the minimums. Take care of the crumbs. A look, a laugh, a smile, a teardrop, an open hand. Take care of the crumbs. They are food also. But of course, in the modern world, we have rather lost this sensitivity to our ultimate dependency, have we not? Our relationship to sun and soil and seed and God. I mean, ask the kids where bread comes from, and you know what they'll tell you, Dominic's or Jewel. But the poet knows better. Back of the loaf is the snowy flour, and back of the flour the mill, and back of the mill is the wheat and the shower and the sun and the Father's will. And we have rather lost touch of that, haven't we? Our farmer grandfathers, and remember in 1880, 9 of 10 Americans lived on a farm. Our farmer grandfathers and grandmothers almost instinctively gave thanks for food on the table because they knew it wasn't just a product of their ingenuity, and they knew it might not always be there in bounty. Come ye thankful people, come, raise the song of harvest home. They sang that with a heart that it's very hard for us to muster. If we give thanks before we eat, it's more ritual than it is relief that we're not going to starve for a little while longer. Abundance, I say, and perhaps refined sugar have distorted our relationship to food. It is no longer a gift from God. It's a problem. Overweight, 56% of all Americans, according to the latest statistics. Anorexia, diet, fasting. There are even conferences now on fasting as a way to lose weight. One notice for such read, fasting conference, cost for attending included in the meals. But it is still a gift, the gift of life, to be received with gratitude and together. And when Christians do it, in this meal Jesus gave us, they believe that it's not only bread and wine that is present, but He is as well, in a very special way, drawing us back together as a very special community. Special community because, first of all, a community that is bound together by its common dependency upon Him and His love and forgiveness. You see, most of the communities of this world, good or bad, depend on something else. Pedigree, ethnicity, athletic ability, financial status, tough initiations, sex, maturity, nationality, SAT scores, some supposed virtue. There's nothing wrong with a measure of that, but when that's all there is, we end up divided, excluding and excluded. It's really only in a special community of common dependency upon God, His love and forgiveness, that a truly human community is born and can be sustained over time. A human community where we are all simply children of God, where the barriers are down and we are all welcome. Only in this kind of community is there really hope for the human race. Haven't you noticed when you come to communion, the church doesn't card you and doesn't ask for your driver's license? My wife and I stopped at a McDonald's on the way up to Michigan to get a cup of coffee, and she sent me in telling me to ask for a senior citizen cup of coffee. And this marvelous and beautiful young lady facing me said, "I suppose I should ask for your driver's license." She made my day. The fact is, you are human is enough. Well, sadly, not enough for all churches. But then they have to ask themselves how they reflect the spirit of one who ate indiscriminately with moralist and moneylender, Pharisee and tax collector, priest, and even women, no less. I, for one, find it hard to imagine the presence and spirit of Jesus in a place where anybody is excluded from the party. Martin Marty tells how the late Cardinal Joseph Bernardin attended graduation ceremonies at St. John's University in June 1996, just months before his death. And he particularly wanted to see a resident there, the 90-year-old Benedictine father, Godfrey Diekman. Bernardin said to him, "You know, I'm sick, and I'm not sure I can finish Mass, so I don't just want to make conversation. I want you to tell me what is on your heart about what is really important in life." So, said Father Diekman, I talked about our being sons and daughters of God, and how that's at the heart of it all, and how that is, after all, the glad tidings. As simple as that. That's what they found themselves to be back then under the impress of his special spirit. No longer Parthians, Medes, Elamites, Jews, Cretans, Arabs, but sons and daughters of God, all eating the same bread, all depending on the same God, all imbibing the same Spirit of Jesus. And you know, that special community of the Spirit of Jesus exploded on the landscape of history as none other ever has, because it was not only a community of dependency, but a community of discipline. You shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and to the ends of the earth. They came to know that the highest reason for their living was to be Jesus wherever they were, to a world that needed him and his Spirit desperately. Not a grab bag of regulations and laws, rather the discipline of witnessing with their very lives to the Spirit they had discovered in him. The witness did not mean street corner speeches. It meant simply being the kind of community and people that they were. And they took the world by storm. These are the best calculations of our scholars. In the year 50, they were about 1,400. In the year 100, they were 7,500. In the year 150, 40,000. In the year 200, 220,000. In the year 250, 1,170,000. And in the year 300, 6,300,000. More than half the human race in that day. And the sociologists seem quite convinced as to why. They tell us that this strange people exhibited not in their chatter, but in their lives, the Spirit of Jesus. That is, they were a movement that in the great plagues of the 2nd and 3rd century, which almost devastated the empire, a movement that nursed and loved and cared not only for their own, like most tribes tended to do, but victims stranger to them. And this was in stark contrast to the general public who abandoned their ill in the streets in panic and flight. They were an open, courageous, inclusive, accepting, forgiving, healing community. I must add that then in the 4th century something happened which may have in many ways eroded this very special community and its power. Constantine declared Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. And this incredible movement very early took on the culture and structure of imperial power. In came authority and hierarchy, and it's rather sad to say, out went in many ways a lot of the spirit of the movement. From my perspective, it is still this union of throne and altar which explains why much of the official Christian church, especially in Europe today, is quite dead. But that spirit is still very much alive here and there. Back in Jerusalem it is, beleaguered but alive. As you probably know, Marlene and I love to travel and use much of our vacation time to do so, alone and with friends from this congregation. And we love to do so for the experience of sharing the life of this special community around the world. It really is there, and it gives us hope for this world. We experience realities that'll never make CNN. Last May, we were privileged to be present for the wedding of a young Assyrian Orthodox Palestinian Christian by the name of Simon, who we've known for over 10 years. Married to Emily Pott of San Rafael, California, daughter of a Presbyterian minister with whom I attended college 40 years ago. There in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem, Christian communities of faith still hang on, caught between the dominant Jewish and Muslim population. This community of faith, the Syrian Orthodox Church of St. Mark, traces itself back to the time of Jesus, has within its walls the upper room where he may well have uttered the words of our text this morning. And the wedding service, as all services in that church, was in Aramaic, Jesus' mother tongue. A proud, hospitable, loving people who breathe the Spirit of their Lord and who've lived faithful to him there for 2,000 years. By the way, this white stole I wear was created by the Mukhtar, the lay leader of that community, by name Sammy Barson, who is a tailor in Old Jerusalem. But also to the ends of the earth. There are estimates that the underground church in China today is 60 to 70 million and growing. The church in Africa south of the Sahara is experiencing unprecedented growth. In fact, within a few years, there will be more Christians in the southern hemisphere than there are in the northern. And in many places, it is a church of the Spirit of Jesus. In August, we with a group from this church attended worship in Soweto, that town of 5 million or more on the outskirts of Johannesburg, the town where the black miners were exiled after work each day during apartheid, now a growing and prospering city. Sunday in Soweto is a mosaic of people walking to church. And you can tell which church they're going to by the colors that the women wear. If you're a Baptist, you wear red and black. If you're Church of England, you wear white and black. Don't ask me why. We went to the Church of England, where we've worshipped now on 3 occasions. High church, priests along with 30 or 40 parishioners in colorful vestments, clouds of incense, common cup communion, almost 3 hours, singing, glorious, heartfelt singing all the way from German chorale to native songs, lunch together following. They spend their day at church. My wife did learn something interesting about the singing. The liturgy and the sermon was in English, Zulu, and Xhosa languages. And the minister would switch back and forth rather quickly from language to language as he preached with great fervor, moving up and down the aisle as he preached. Interestingly, he urged his people to remember the Spirit of Jesus as they dealt with both their newfound freedom and their old wounds of hurt. But he did tend to go on and on until behind us, a woman would break into a song, which everybody obviously knew and joined in, singing lustily, whereupon he would scurry back to the pulpit and his notes. After the service, during the lunch, Marlene found out who that woman was who kept breaking in. Can you guess? The minister's wife. She said to Marlene, "I do that because he gets too long-winded and it shuts him up." It has occurred to me that my wife can also sing. But does the church in South Africa make a difference? Blacks and whites that we know in responsible positions insist that if South Africa makes it, it will surely be in large part because both of the sides during the late apartheid and even now are deeply Christian. Nobel Prize winners Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk ascribed their coming together, as difficult as it was, to their own Christian faith. I find it striking that Mandela has retained the first name given him by his teacher in the Methodist school he attended as a boy. Unable to pronounce his tribal name, she named him Nelson after Admiral Lord Nelson. And then there is the church in East Europe, the late communist countries, that is taking up new life and offering new hope and possibility by living out the Spirit of their Lord. I had a letter recently from Tibor Kish, pastor in the Romanian village of Monasterini, where our young people and adults have visited, and where this congregation made possible the construction of a parish house so that they would have a gathering place for congregation and community. They've had none, only a very severe and very cold church building. A very poor village, only about 1/4 of the people have running water in their homes, very divided, half Reformed and half Orthodox. Now Tibor writes, "I have in mind the founding of a Reformed and Orthodox women's guild with the task of a community-wide activity to support the sick and the poor. I already have the agreement of my Orthodox colleague. Of course, beside the beautiful vision, there are a lot of hindrances and difficulties, but it's worthwhile trying. We can already be pleased that we are able to express our faith in our common Lord of peace, not only in words, but with deeds." He goes on, "Thank God Ebolia's," that's his wife, "Ebolia's health apparently is not worsening. However, she still has difficulty dealing with her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. The bad vision of the wheelchair or her future incapability of managing our 2 children frightens her very much. But we trust in God, and we wish you all the best, and your whole family, and your whole congregation." So I've passed the letter on. To the ends of the earth, but only as it remains a community of his Spirit. Only as this King reigns in our hearts, and only as by the quality of our lives we are witness to him and his power in the human story. The martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer said not long before he died that perhaps it was time for the church to stop talking and simply live the story and spirit of Jesus for a while so that the world might see and believe. It's amazing where you run into his spirit. It's out there in the strangest places, even the New York Times Magazine. Barbara Grizzuti Harrison wrote this not too long ago. Hippolytus, martyr and saint, wrote of Christ, his divine spirit gave life and strength to a tottering world, and the whole universe became stable once more, as if the agony of the cross had in some way gotten into everything. She goes on, for me, he has gotten into everything. I see him in the timely, unaffected gestures of friendship and the passions of real love. I see him in the face of a doctor who serendipitously entered my life at a time when I thought I had no more life left. I saw him once, and I will see him forever, in a dead teacher of mine who rescued my injured spirit. I see him in my daughter's merry eyes and in the merry play of her mind. I see him in my son's hands, the hands of a painter who loves God's world. Give the benefit of the doubt to the poor, a saint wrote, unless it's proven otherwise, so I try to see him in the poor. Can I prove that he whom I love exists? Of course not. Proof is the work of grace. I make no claim to living a good life. I know that I would live a worse life without him, and I would always be lonely. My Spirit shall come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses. And lo, I am with you always, even to the ends of the earth. Indeed.